Hello, I'm Kier Verhel de Dios, and I'm here to present to you my term project, Unit 18 UX Design Principles for Dublin Institute of Design. So, for this specific brief, we were tasked to choose a movie character and make a website out of that character. So, basically, the character would be our client for this specific project. And for mine, I've chosen Contagion, which is a 2015 film about an infection outbreak that started in China and spread across the world. And it follows the life of the different people, doctors, biotechnicians, journalists, and ordinary people on their experiences with the disease. I've chosen Dr. Ellis Cheever, which was played by Lawrence Fishburne, as my client. He is a doctor and the head of infection containment of the CDC in America. And the task that was given to me as a designer is to create a website that will help inform and educate the public, specifically the Irish public, about coronavirus, how it spreads, what are the symptoms, and what to do in case you get the infection. So I'll be taking advantage of the web technologies and innovations that I know of and put that onto the website to make it more intuitive and user-friendly. So my project would focus on the coronavirus or the COVID-19, which started in Wuhan, Hubei province in China on the 31st of December 2019. Many scientists believe that the virus came from an unknown animal source, which was later on presumed to be bats, and then was passed on to another mammal and then to humans. The virus caused pneumonia-like symptoms, fever, shortness of breath, cough. But unlike pneumonia, the symptoms are more pronounced, they're more severe. This has caused confusion and massive hysteria in different populations, and in some countries, it has caused racism and xenophobia to Chinese and Asians, which eventually lead to misinformation. So the virus has already become a pandemic, and it affects a lot of economies, countries, and it has caused a lot of lives around the world. In Ireland, we already have around 900 cases as of this recording, and it has already caused a big impact on our economy and in the society in general. And the only thing that the government is asking for people is to be informed and be educated about the disease, specifically the measures on quarantine and self-isolation. Because despite of the reminders of the government to stay at home, self-isolate, people are still out in the streets unnecessarily and on parks in groups, and this increases the chance for faster transmission, especially among the older population. So as the designer for the project, the solution that I'm proposing is a digital product that will promote the general awareness about coronavirus among the Irish public. I feel that at this day and age, since all people or most people are using their phones and are familiar in using the internet, a digital product would be very helpful and useful in information dissemination. So the specific goals of the project would be: number one, to educate the Irish public about early detection, prompt action if suspected positive, management and recovery, update the Irish public about the latest news and developments with treatment and management. Third would be to refute misconceptions about the disease, specifically xenophobia and racism. And also engage the Irish public in information dissemination to other members of the community. So here are the methods that I've done in order to tackle this problem. First would be to identify my potential users. So since there are already a few literature that went out on the internet regarding who's the population that's most susceptible and most affected by the disease or the virus, I'm going to use those literature to identify my target population. I will also be presenting a persona to better illustrate the kind of audience that I want for the project. And I would also assess their knowledge about the disease through a questionnaire that I've made using a tool that was already used before in Saudi Arabia. Knowledge assessment would be a very important part of this process because it will serve as a guide to identify the hierarchy of information my users need to know regarding the disease. The next stage of the process would be literature review. I'll be carrying out a secondary research wherein I'll look into different literature, articles, news, and write-ups about coronavirus, and I will select the information that I need to put on the website. The third stage would be similar website analysis. So I'll be reviewing 3 different websites and identify the strengths and weaknesses of each and use them as a guide on designing the actual layout, the actual design, and the content of my website. The fourth stage would be the design phase, wherein I will create an information architecture, a wireframe, a sitemap, and a prototype. And lastly would be the user testing, wherein I'll ask 2 people from my target population to review the website and give their insights about it so that I can make the necessary changes. So now I'll be discussing each stage of my process, beginning with identifying my target users. So I've searched different literature online for any data about the Irish population, who or what age group has been affected by the disease, but it seems that there's no literature yet here in Ireland about this specific data. So for this part, I used the one I saw on an Italian website as per the case distribution of the disease by age. And I found out that most of the age group affected is 51 to 70 years of age with 37.5%, followed by 71 years and up and 19 to 50 years old. So for my project, based on this data, my target population would be people aged 19 and up, with, of course, special consideration for the older demographics, because as we know, they have different learning needs and cognitive needs that needs to be addressed. Based on the data that I've gathered, I've created a user persona. So meet Robert and Sarah Jones. They are a couple based on South Dublin and has just came back from a week-long holiday in Italy. They are scared that they might have had the virus. Sarah has been feeling ill for 2 days now. She mentioned having a temperature. Robert, on the other hand, is feeling well, but he's worried about his wife. For demographics, Sarah is 53 and retired, but she enjoys cooking and baking, and she goes to a local shopping center twice a week to buy her baking and cooking needs. Robert, on the other hand, works in a farm with his 2 sons. Although he is 56, he's very active. He goes for a run and lift weights, and he enjoys traveling with his wife. So based on these information, we can see that they are old, so they are very susceptible with having the disease, and they're very active. So that means if they are infected, or if they have the infection, the rate that they could spread the disease would be faster because they're very active. They go out and they interact with a lot of people, I assume, based on the data. And so they are a perfect target as the users for this product. Now, because they're old, they have specific learning needs. For Sarah, she uses the computer a lot to find her baking and cooking recipes. So we can assume that Sarah is literate with computers and internet. So it would be easier for her to navigate through the website. She uses eyeglasses to read, and she's a former primary school teacher. Robert, on the other hand, has very little knowledge of computers and internet. He finished high school, and he's also using glasses to read. But he likes reading books and daily newspaper. Now, the next step would be to identify the user's knowledge of coronavirus. So for this step, I asked more than 10 people to answer a questionnaire I've made based on a study conducted in Saudi Arabia in 2012 that assessed the knowledge of the people about MERS-CoV, which is also an epidemic that happened years back. The questionnaire focused on three major areas, which are general knowledge of the disease, which encompass causes, symptoms, transmission, population affected, and the disease process itself. Also, precautionary measures, which focuses on prevention strategies, isolation, protection, and safety practices, and lastly, management of the disease should they get the infection. So that involves testing, medication, and vaccination. The responses revealed that most of the users have knowledge gaps on precautionary measures and management of coronavirus. Specifically, there's little to no knowledge about self-isolation techniques, the use of personal protective equipment like masks, and what to do in case of exposure. Also, people are confused as to the treatment strategy. Some people think that there's a treatment for the disease when there's none discovered yet. And also vaccination. Some people responded that if ever they get the disease, they would get vaccination for it. But as of the moment, there's no vaccine yet for coronavirus. Now, based on these data, we can say that our focus and priority would be precautionary measures and management of the disease. So these information will be the first thing that the users will see on the website. Again, let me just emphasize that the reason why we have these steps on our process is for us to know the hierarchy of our information, the information that we're going to put on the website. So obviously, the most important information that the client needs to know has to go first and then followed by the least important ones. The next step would be to know the contents of the website. Since this is an informative website, we need to gather the most reliable, the most updated, and useful data that we can get. And so I've used the data from the HSC website, the World Health Organization, and the CDC website because they're the most reliable sources. After that, I reviewed three different websites that offer the same service that my website would intend to provide. And that includes the CDC website, the WHO website, and the HSE website. I've used the SWOT analysis as my framework for reviewing the website because it highlights the strengths, the weaknesses, any threats and opportunities for growth for these websites. SWOT analysis would be a big help for me as a designer because on identifying the strengths and weaknesses of my competitors, I would be able to include these strengths as well on my website. I would also be able to take advantage of any opportunities for improvement, and at the same time eliminating any weaknesses and any threats to my website. Now, this table presents the SWOT analysis I've done for these three websites. We'll start with the strengths first. If you will notice, all three websites share the same strengths except for the HSE website, which I feel is the strongest among the three because they offer a unique service, which is a fixed help button on the page and also 24/7 chat support. So I'll be trying to include that on my website because I feel that it's a very helpful feature. Generally, all websites have the latest information available. All of them are easy to navigate. And also, I'd like to highlight this feature in the WHO website wherein they have like a language support. For my website, since my target audience will be the Irish public, I would probably put English and Gaelic as an option for the users. And also, all websites have an effective call to action buttons, especially on the homepage. For weaknesses, I feel that all of these websites are just very plain, probably because they're not really a fancy website. They don't intend to kind of surprise the users with spectacles of visual images and stuff like that. They only want to inform the public about the coronavirus. Although for the World Health Organization website, I feel that the layout is very confusing. There's loads of information on the page. There's no information hierarchy, and the typeface is also inconsistent. There's large fonts, there's small fonts, and you can't really recognize which one is the header, which one is the paragraph line, because the fonts are just messed up. There's also no symmetry and balance with the design elements, and actually there's no design element to the WHO website. It's bland. For CDC, the social media buttons are very hard to find. I think they're at the very bottom of the page and they're very tiny. So for my website, I would probably make the social media buttons bigger so that the audience can see it straight away. For opportunities, HC can take advantage of branding opportunities for their website, especially because they have a nice layout. So a branding strategy would make the website much more effective. For the WHO website, they could also use some branding and some live chat support, as well as with the CDC website. For threats, the only threat that I can see for all the websites would be other websites that would come up offering wrong information. So that would be a biggest threat for all of them. Based on the collated data during the SWOT analysis, I came up with some recommendations. First one would be a branding strategy. A good branding strategy would help reach a lot of people and would expand the market more. And also, I would also consider the cognitive needs of the users or the learning needs of the users, since my target users would be more on the older demographics. I would also want my design to be responsive to screen sizes, although this one is in orange because I wasn't able to do this on my prototype because of time constraints. One thing that I really like about the HSC website was the live chat support, and I want to include that on my website as well, on a fixed position element, which will be easy to find on the website. I will definitely want to organize my contents from the most to the less important ones. I would include social media buttons and language support button. As I've mentioned, I will put English and Gaelic since the target audience would be the Irish public. I will make the call to action buttons effective. And I would put a page summary for each page, since this will be like an informative website. It would be easier for the users to navigate through the website using a fixed navigation tab or element on the website, wherein if they click on a title, it will automatically jump to the content. The next part would be the most fun part because it's the design phase. So the first step that I did during the design phase would be to create a sitemap. My technique would be to write the necessary contents and topics on a sticky note and arrange them and prioritize them based on the identified learning needs of my users. So for this case, we identified that precautionary measures and management and treatment would be the top priority information that we need to put on the website. And then after that, I created a digitalized sitemap. So as you can see, the topmost boxes would be represents my navigation page. So there'll be 4 options on the navigation page, including the precaution and management, which is, as what I mentioned earlier, would be the priority information that will be highlighted on the website. I also plan to include a contact us button on the navigation page, which will include the live chat support, which is a feature that I feel would be very beneficial for the users. On the homepage column, you will see that I also put the precaution and management on the topmost part of the homepage, while knowledge and other information and news would be on the bottom half because it's not as important. The focus also of the landing page would be on protecting yourself, which is part of the precautionary measures page. And again, that is one of the priority information or priority element of the website. Next would be the creation of the wireframe. So for my wireframe, I used the traditional technique, which is a pen and paper. I did not sketch the website page by page, but I have some number markers. If you can see that, they're in red. And that served as my guide on how I did my layout for each page. Next that I conceptualized was the design elements, specifically the branding for the website. I decided to use orange and purple as my color of choice. Orange because it is the universal color for hand washing, which is an essential technique on preventing the disease, and purple because one, it's an eye-catching color, and number two, it's a good contrast for orange. And for the logo, I used the awareness ribbon to represent the cause of the organization. Awareness ribbon is widely used in the healthcare industry for different causes. For example, for cancer, they use pink ribbon, and for AIDS, I think they use red ribbon. I chose Beat Corona as the name of the website because I feel like it's a striking name and it's a very strong name with a very empowering message, encouraging people to stand together to beat this pandemic. On the right side, you will see the buttons that I've used and also some of the images and icons that I incorporated on the website. And once I've established my branding elements, I went on and made my high fidelity prototype. So for my prototype, I used Adobe XD, and I'm going to walk you through to my prototype. For the purpose of this short demo, I will be previewing the prototype on the Adobe XD app just because previewing the prototype on the internet takes a while. So it's a 10-page prototype, and I'm gonna start showing you the home page. So as we've mentioned earlier, we put the precautionary measures and the management section on the navigation bar, as well as the home button, which is represented by the logo, and the contact us button. I also included the language support on the far most right side of the page. And for the landing page, I used the hand washing educational material because this is the most important measure on how to prevent the disease. And I also put founder of the beatcorona.org, which is Dr. Ellis Cheever, which is also the task of the project or the brief. And on the left side, I put the news section, and down here the about us and the precautionary measure page or the section and the management section here. And then I also put the additional contents here at the bottom. At the very bottom, you'll see the footer, which I'll put like a subscription page, and the social media buttons. I'm gonna show you one of the pages real quick. I just want to show you the fixed elements on the right side of the page, which is the search bar and the kind of the summary page. So if they click on say this section, it will jump right straight to the protecting your family page, which is there. And at the very bottom, I also put a summary of the pages so that if the users want to just jump onto this page or say the coronavirus page, you can just click on that and it will take them straight to that page. The last part would be user testing. So for this part, I asked two people to review the website. I asked Paula, which is a nurse that I work with in Beaumont Hospital, to review the website. She's a 32-year-old nurse who works in the A&E department of Beaumont. And also, I asked a friend of mine who works as a college professor. He's Daniel F. And he's 45 years old. I've collated the responses that they had during the testing session, and I divided it into strengths and weaknesses. For strengths, they said that the design elements are very attractive and there's a unique branding onto it. It's very eye-catching and it's very pleasing to the eye, they said. And the interactive elements are effective, but they don't overwhelm the users, which is good. And overall, they said the entire aesthetic and design choices suit the target audience. Because I made the fonts bigger and the images larger as well. Content-wise, they said the information is clustered according to the order of importance, which is one of our goals. And all the content that was in the website was very useful and educational. Weaknesses, they said some of the links are not working as they should, which I feel is a problem with the prototyping app that I used. Some elements are also misplaced, also a problem with the prototyping. And they said that the website is kind of bland in terms of visuals, because there's not much images to it, which I would agree, because I made the website more informative than making it a spectacle with the visuals and graphics and animation. So I just made it really, really simple so that the audience would focus more on the information than be distracted on colors and images and animation. There's also no scroll bars, they said, but it's a software issue. Content-wise, they said it's very text-heavy. Again, there's not much videos, images, and illustrations, which was intentional. Overall, I can say that the users were happy with the result of the prototype, and they feel that this would be a very useful tool in informing people about this crisis that we're experiencing right now all over the world. With this project, I learned that making a design as user-centric as possible is very important, so that users would be able to realize and experience the benefits of the product and why it's made. Branding is also one thing that is important nowadays when you're creating a digital content, especially if your purpose is to reach as many audience as possible. Overall, I've enjoyed this experience, and I'm hoping I'd be able to make meaningful and useful products like this in the future. Thank you very much for listening.